Hello, everyone. I'm Janet Salmons, Methods Guru for Sage MethodSpace. And today we're going to talk about career crossroads and thinking about career opportunities for scholar practitioners and for people who are changing careers. So today I'm joined by Gary Burkholder. But before we get started, I want to just take a moment and introduce Sage MethodSpace. In case you are new to our blog community, this is a site that is sponsored by Sage Publications, and we're interested broadly in all things to do with designing, planning, conducting research, writing about it, sharing results in traditional and new ways. And you can see that at the heart of this Venn diagram is teaching and learning, because we're committed to supporting new and emerging researchers through both formal methods instruction and supervision and guidance. So we hope that you'll find some resources on MethodSpace at whatever point you may be in. So Gary, why don't you introduce yourself, and then, as you know, have some questions for you.
Great, thanks, Janet. So I have been with Walden University for almost 20 years now. Walden University is an institution that's focused on scholar practitioners. So we have, and that's really been our history, has been around older adults who are completing their master's and PhD programs. I'm with the School of Psychology and also with the Center for Research Quality. And the Center for Research Quality supports student and faculty in completing their research. I've been in a number of administrative positions at Walden as well, but one of the things that's been consistent over all the time that I've been at Walden is that I've mentored doctoral students, probably either chaired, been on a committee, member for almost 100 doctoral students over my time at Walden. And so I've gotten to know a lot of these students and what their aims are, objectives are in getting the doctorate degree.
Right, and certainly the kinds of dilemmas that people face, what their thoughts are in going forward. And I think, these perspectives will be helpful to other of our MethodSpace readers who, either have, gone back to school to get their graduate degree, or already have their degree, and are out, they're in the workplace and need to think about career changes. So, particularly right now, when we're recording this interview at this time of the pandemic and all of the impacts on higher ed and, the economy at large globally, what do you recommend to people who are, trying to, think about either, a new job or changing jobs at this time? And, in particular, what kinds of skill building activities can they do to build their CVs, while they're in that process?
That's a really great question. So, when I think about that question, I think about sort of three different stages in that decisions about career change. One of them is, making the decision to pursue a doctorate. The other one is you're in graduate school. What are the kinds of things that you can be doing to prepare yourself for post graduation and postdoctoral work, and then having your doctorate and going out into the workforce. So, starting with the deciding on whether to pursue a doctorate, I think that's a really important consideration that everybody has to think through. We look at the data. There are a lot of doctoral degrees being conferred now, and there's a lot of literature out there showing that the market is kind of saturated with PhDs and professional doctorates. And one of the the biggest implication of that is probably for academia. There are, and I'll talk a little bit more about COVID later, but because I think that COVID in a lot of ways is changing what the higher ed landscape looks like. But the competition for academic jobs is much more intense than it used to be. And so a lot of the people who are getting their doctoral degrees are going to be looking outside of academia for potential. And so I think given that, and I think there's also research that still shows that people with doctorate degrees earn more money over their lifetime and also have lower unemployment than people with other degrees. So, having a doctoral degree definitely has advantages, but somebody has to really think about the context and decide for themselves whether the doctoral degree is what they want.
Mhm.
People talk about career changes, and sometimes I question whether the doctoral degree is the right way to go, because so many avenues or so many options out there don't require doctoral degrees. They require skills that could be obtained at the master's degree or through direct experience. And a lot of the students that I've worked with at Walden, most of them are not going to school for career changes. They're in a doctoral program for their own personal and professional development. They want to be a doctor, quote unquote, and they want the PhD behind their name. But they also recognize that there are some skills that they learn in a doctoral program that can be transferred, and help them in their current positions to be better leaders and more informed leaders. So, so that first stage, deciding whether to pursue the doctorate, just thinking about where it is that you want to go, and it is a significant financial and time investment to get the doctoral degree. Is that, in the long run, is that going to be worth meeting your own objectives? So that's that first group. The second is you're in a doctoral program now. What are the kind of things that you could be doing to build your CV? And the first thing that I'll say is that to try as much as possible to publish and present.
Right.
For people particularly that want to go into academia, you're going to need some kind of a leg up on, in the competition when we're in an environment where there's several hundred people that are competing for the same job. So, getting your name out there in a peer-reviewed publication is great. When I went to graduate school, I didn't set out to be go into academia, but I had a mentor who really encouraged me at all stages to publish whatever I was doing. So while I was in graduate school, I worked on some panel presentations in classrooms. I turned that into a publication when I didn't even have a master's degree yet, or I just had my master's degree. I also published my master's thesis while I was there, and then in a special projects class, I published yet another paper on something I was working on. So having that, I was able to leave and have those on my CV when I was gone. And conference presentations are great. They're actually fairly easy to get into, either national or local ones. And the particularly poster presentations, where and I think poster presentations in a lot of ways are greater at conferences because you essentially stand by your work and you have a lot more face-to-face interaction with people, and can get help on your own development of your ideas and things like that. But I went to conferences every year, sometimes 2 a year while I was in graduate school, and I never had a problem getting my work accepted for poster presentations. So I did that. And also another is, most of us in a doctoral program, we have either an area of expertise already or a burgeoning area of expertise. I did a lot of consulting with faculty. My area was statistics, and so I was able to consult with faculties while a graduate student, getting that experience, helping people to develop instruments and getting that on the CV. So there are some things that doctoral students can be doing to help ensure that they have the right CV when they graduate. And then I would, and the other thing I would say is teaching experience. The competition out there used to be, when I first came into online teaching, there weren't enough people who could teach online. And so it's the buyer's market, so to speak. Now we're in the opposite situation where the market has a lot of PhDs and they have a lot of people who have experience with online teaching. So getting an online teaching job is not guaranteed like it used to be. And so if you can get that teaching experience at a community college or teaching an undergraduate class in your program, and particularly if it's online, will be really beneficial to help you to build, help the student to build the CV. Very, very important. And then that other group of students, you just graduated, what can you do? You know, again, teaching experience, if you get it at the junior college level, teaching undergraduate courses, teaching online as much as possible. There are opportunities out there. Again, they're a little bit more challenging, but somebody who has a PhD or a doctoral degree and who has some teaching experience behind them will definitely be much more competitive in those positions that are out there. Turning your dissertation or doctoral study into a paper, a publication, or a conference presentation. A lot of times there's the time to do that, and it can be a little overwhelming. You know, your dissertation or doctoral study might be 200 pages, and how to narrow that down into a smaller document. But it's worth the effort to do that, get it into a peer-reviewed publication, and get your name out there as somebody who has expertise in that particular area. Consulting gigs, you know, continuing to find consulting work, even if it's low paying. Again, you can, these are things that you can add to the CV that will help you to edge yourself out among the competition. And then the other thing I would say is that for somebody who's interested in academia, there are lots of postdoctoral fellowships out there. And I had a friend who actually took one of those. She was in one of those postdoctoral fellowships for a year, and she went through it and she realized that academia wasn't her thing. So it was a really good experience for her. One, it's still something that can go on the CV, and it gives teaching and research experience usually. And, you know, for those that are set on academia, it's a good introduction, and to help somebody decide if that's the number of years, you know, if they want to spend the next many years in academia. And that's a great CV enhancer, particularly around the teaching and research skills that you can generate during that year in the postdoctoral fellowship.
But I think in the recommendations that you've suggested, you know, one of the points that comes to my mind is that those are also, in each one of those, opportunities to build your network and
Yes.
get your name out there, you know, making friends and finding, you know, other people who are interested in the topics you're interested in. And, you know, so I mean, one of the suggestions I always give people is to look, you know, particularly, you know, while you're in a doctoral program where you can get the student discount, to, you know, look around at the professional associations in your field, because those professional associations, professional societies offer conferences, and now they're moving a lot of those online, so that makes it even more affordable to attend. But you can often join those organizations for, you know, very minimal amount while you are a student. And so then you could join a couple of them and see, you know, which one, you know, is your tribe. And then, you know, perhaps, you know, finding others, you know, who you might co-author something with, or even to look at, you know, I mean, obviously peer-reviewed publications are ideal, but, you know, maybe there is a newsletter or a blog or, you know, some other kind of, you know, way that you can start to get your ideas out there and begin to, you know, find, you know, what your niche is. So, you know, I totally agree. I think, you know, you're really on the right track. So, you know, what, you know, as you mentioned at the beginning, I mean, you know, going into academic faculty types of job search, you know, is extremely competitive. You know, not only in the U.S. but, you know, around the world. They're just there are fewer full-time faculty positions. You know, whether it's called tenure track or you know, has a different name. You know, there are fewer of those, you know, which have a solid pay and benefits and all of those things. So, you know, but there are other places where people might think about, you know, finding a position. So, you know, what do you suggest for people who might be looking at, you know, other kinds of opportunities where they can still use their expertise and the discipline that comes from doing even, the kinds of professional research you might do in a professional doctorate, as well as the scholarly research you might do in a PhD program. Where else might they go, and how might they pursue those kinds of opportunities?
Yeah, and that's great, because there's a lot of students who are not going to be going in academia. So what can I do? And first of all, I think all of the experience that you gain in graduate school, if you go to conferences, if you publish, if you do consulting work, these things all still are very good for your resume if you're going outside of academia. It tells an employer that you can write, that you have presentation skills. Somebody who's been through a doctoral program has to navigate the challenges of making 3 or 4 committee members happy. So you've got those interpersonal communication skills as well. So there's a lot of benefit that comes from just going through the doctoral process that will be helpful once you get out into the workforce. And I also, it's very important to stress that professional doctorate or PhD, the research skills that you have and you gather through those are really generalizable across anywhere that you go. The research skills and the critical thinking skills, those are two, and also knowledge, of the fact that you know how to generate knowledge, either theoretical knowledge or knowledge in your profession. Those kind of things those kind of skills that you get, really will be appealing to employers, and particularly, I think a lot of places are looking for leaders who have these kind of skills and come with these kind of skills. And I also think about, not-for-profits. A lot of those that don't have as much money, they don't have research departments. Somebody who has can go in and be a manager or leader, and who has the research and critical thinking skills can really be an asset to that kind of an organization. I've had students do their dissertation or doctoral study work over the years, who've collected data at these kind of organizations, and sometimes it's the very first time that organization has had anybody to systematically look at their effectiveness. And this is something that doctoral students have in some ways that others don't. Right. And then again, in my institution, a lot of the students are already working they're already established in their professions, and they're not necessarily looking to change jobs. But what they are bringing is that they're bringing these new skills on research and critical thinking, and how to think more critically about how to move the organization forward. Mm-hmm. So, I think, and something else that I've seen, sometimes they say, oh, if I have a doctoral degree, I'm overqualified, and I'll just report my master's or bachelor degree. But and I've seen sort of mixed commentary about that. But in the end, I think that the being overqualified is probably in some ways maybe more of a myth than an actual reality. Somebody who has those kind of skills and leadership skills that can bring them into organization, I think the organization is going to want that person, rather than maybe somebody who has a little bit more experience but doesn't have the research background, the critical thinking background.
Right. But, 2 things come to mind from the comments that you're making. One is the aspect where, say, social research overlaps with evaluation, and, being able to use your research skills and the kind of discipline and thinking and organization that goes along with that, whether it's in a nonprofit or NGO or even in a business setting, to be able to, bring those kinds of skills to look at either, effectiveness, marketing, other, how do we bring in new participants or new customers or new donors or new partners or whatever it may be. But, the other thing that kind of came to mind when you were speaking is it kind of being able to discern what, tease out, what those skill sets are. That, especially when you're so immersed in a doctoral program or you're a recent graduate and you're thinking, I just need to find a job because I need to bring some income in. But, to really be able to, it's kind of a reflective thing, to sit down and say, well, what are the skills that go into all these things that I've just been doing it. I've been so busy doing it. I haven't been kind
Right.
of, really, separating it out to say, well, gee, when I do this, it involves these skills and being able to really, articulate those in a succinct way so that when you go into an interview or you are writing, a cover letter, to be able to say, well, you can see that I have, PhD. Well, here are some of the skills, that I've learned from that, that I think, might be useful in your agency or organization. So, part of it is just, really thinking through what you've got to offer.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, when we're in the middle of it, we don't have time to really make those connections. But once you have that doctorate, can sit back and reflect. So many of those skills are aligned with what the 21st century skills or the soft skills
Right.
that people are saying employers really want. So much of what we go through in the process of becoming PhDs or professional doctorates are aligned with those skills.
Right. And certainly, as we're seeing today, being able to communicate, you mentioned the interpersonal skills and being able to work with people kind of, you know, um, at different levels of a hierarchy as we go through a doctoral program, we have to do. Uh, those being able to work across differences and across boundaries and with people who have totally different mindsets about things and different expectations and, figuring out how to, position ourselves, within that, is something that a doctoral student has to do. And so,
Mhm.
again, I think, there are a lot of skills that go into that, maybe people haven't really, thought as carefully about that, that would be really relevant
Exactly.
in a competitive job search. Um, so, we mentioned, we're recording this at the time of, we're at the height of the global pandemic, and it's clear that the repercussions of this, will be going on for some time. And, in higher ed and in the business world and, the the world at large, is still trying to figure out really, what that is all going to mean. We can't really necessarily predict, but what what particular contributions do you think that people coming out with a recent PhD, can add?
Yeah, I think this is a great question, and pandemics are not going away. They will continue probably periodically to resurface. We have other events now. With the racial things that are going on right now. Um, and also one of the things that I'm very interested in is public perception of science. And
Mhm.
one of the things that we've noticed is that I've noticed is that that the trust in science has become very polarized, and
Mm.
that there's a significant part of the population that's not really trustworthy of science, not much into evidence thinking or more biased thinking. And so, I put all of this together, and the thing that I think is most important and critical here that a person with a doctoral degree can bring is those critical thinking and evidence-based decision-making skills.
Mhm.
We're at a time right now when information flies. Things come at us so fast that people don't have time to think about this critically. There's so much of it that it has to be sifted through. Um, I I frankly think a lot of people just aren't prepared to be able to deal with that. Where somebody who's been through a doctoral program has learned how to systematically collect evidence and to
Mhm.
gather data and to inform key decisions. That is the skill that's really needed right now. And we need people out there who have the ability to be able to bridge multiple viewpoints and multiple perspectives. And who better to be able to do that than somebody who's come out of a doctoral program who, again, has managed the differences among committee members, but also has experience digging into the literature and the research and learning how to bring together, different and altering perspectives to make the best decision. This is where I think the graduate and PhD training is critical and will be critical now and going forward, to help us in the public to sort of separate the wheat from the chaff, and to really be able to make decisions that are in the best interest of everybody.
Right. Definitely, those problem-solving skills. Being able to look at, well, if I've got, this I've gained from reading the literature, and this I've gained from looking at my own research, and how can I, fuse those together and answer questions. Those are, real skill sets that are needed. And I mean, I think, it has been kind of interesting during this time to see that in some ways, some of the skepticism about science, I think, has shifted. There is an appreciation that, we're going to need research, to figure out how to come out of this. And, we're going to need the kind of more the humanities and, cultural sociologists and, people who study society, to understand the changes and be able to, help people and organizations get through them. So again, being able, for those who are watching this, being able to, hopefully, look at the work you're doing and the work that you have done and kind of dig below the surface of going, yes, I did a literature review. Well, what did that mean? How do you take, how did you evaluate those sources, and how do you, pull out the really relevant bits of knowledge that you can then apply in a different place? Those are really valuable skill sets that you may not even realize that you have, because you've just been busy trying to get it all done. So the last kind of big question that I wanted to ask you, we've talked about, kind of from the student side and from the graduate side, and the need they have to negotiate with their research supervisors and committee members and faculty, etc. And I wondered, since I know you work with faculty, what do you recommend to faculty who may be viewing this, who are responsible for teaching students who are currently, in a graduate or doctoral program, or who are responsible for supervising people through the thesis or dissertation stage?
Yeah, so I have a couple of answers to that. One, of course, is that as faculty members, our job is to convey technical information about the discipline. And so we want to make sure that the students have the most up-to-date information there. I actually think that a lot of the most important things that come out of that faculty-student relationship have to occur in throughout the mentoring, the dissertation mentoring or project study, whatever it's called at the student's institution. And I think the extent that faculty can model the kinds of behaviors that students should be able to use when they get out into the workforce. So, in some ways restating a couple of things that we said, but negotiation skills, how to manage the give and take of a relationship where the faculty member may have one particular idea and the student another, and how you find the compromise and be able to make compromises there. Extremely important to do that. And independent thinking, being able, that's really kind of kind of the hallmark of doctoral education is it's the ability to conduct independent research,
Mhm.
whether it's theoretical research or applied research. So the extent that faculty members can really encourage students to think independently and to encourage them how to reach out and go to different sources of information and to do that on their own and come back with a project. So as faculty members, and it's a little, at the institution I work at, we're sort of a little backwards at how we work at. So you go to a traditional institution, a lot of time the student goes with the understanding that they're going to do the research that the major professor wants them to do. When
Mhm.
the student comes to Walden, it's backwards from that. A lot of the faculty actually aren't actively doing research. What we want the students to come in with their own ideas and do the research that they want to do and the research that's most meaningful for them. So I think the extent that faculty members can really encourage that in students, that this is their time and that to make a mark and to really get established in something. So it should be something that's really of interest to them. So that's another thing I would say. And then, just the other skills, like timeliness and, uh, as we know, going through this, skills, we're under a deadline usually to get that done. So, how to manage our time most effectively.
Mhm.
And I think those are the best ways as well. So I think those are some basic piece of information about that.
Well, and based on the comments that we've been discussing with the previous questions, perhaps trying to emphasize, what, some of the skills, kind of to reflect back to the student, what these skill sets are that they're developing, and,
Mhm.
kind of trying to identify them. Well, you're not just doing the literature review because it says in the dissertation or thesis guide that a literature review is required in a dissertation.
Right.
Doing this because here's what you're learning when you do this. So
Yep.
really being able to, tie that, and help the student to see that, these are not just kind of a mechanism of torture that the faculty have cooked up, but, really do, how is this going to relate to, what to help you prepare for whatever, the career is that you want to do next.
Yeah, and the literature review, you're learning an important skill of how to synthesize multiple
Right.
viewpoints and communicate that back out to a variety of audiences. Some might be academic, some might be business organizational audiences, and that is a skill. And writing, those are skills that are incredibly important still out there in the workforce.
Right.
And to be able to, again, as you said, to translate, to take that skill and how to make that marketable is really, really important to do.
Well, before we close, I want to just bring to the attention of the viewer the book that you wrote, co-edited with some other faculty members, and I think this might be quite useful to not only to us the students who are thinking about trying to design their research, but also to faculty and research supervisors who are going to guide them. And of course, you've also contributed extensively to MethodSpace, and so we hope that the viewers will take a look at those posts as well. So, is there anything else you would like to add?
I just wanted to, just in the end, I came across this. It's something called the cheeky scientist, but this man, Dr. Hankel, um, had sort of what we've been talking about, but he had a really succinct way to how you can take the skills that you learn in a graduate program and market themselves. And I just want to read them very quickly.
Okay.
There were 7 of them. So his points as one is that as a new doctoral student, you know how to find answers.
Mhm.
You don't fear failure. You know how to deal with negative bosses. Uncomfortable with uncertainty. You'd rather create than regurgitate information. Thrive on competition and collaboration, and qualified for every industry position. And I think I love that article because I think he encapsulates in those 7 points very clearly what are those key skills that you take out there that nobody else has, or maybe nobody else has because of that experience that you've had as a doctoral student.
Oh, great. I think, you know, I hope that this is of value to the viewers, and that they'll, you know, take a look at your book as well. And so thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Janet. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.